Hi, this is Michael Rubin, and we've been talking about using one scale to play a melody note and choosing notes from that scale to create the chords, and only notes from the one scale, and that is called diatonic playing. So we looked at how to do it with a major scale, but the whole reason I brought this up was because the Dorian scale is not only a bluesy scale, so we could use first position Dorian to play blues, but it is also a minor scale. So if somebody says play in C minor and you've got your C harmonica, you can play first position Dorian. If they say we're in G minor, you could play on a G harp first position Dorian. So what I wanted to show is that Dorian is a minor scale, but it is a very specific minor scale. So that if you wanted to play diatonically to the Dorian scale, the chords that the rhythm players would be playing would have to be very specific chords. So let's use the same system we used to find the chords from a major scale. Let's use that same system to find the 1, 4, and 5 chords for a Dorian scale. Now, sometimes when people play in minor, they use 2 chords, 3 chords, 6 chords, and 7 chords. Chords that begin on the second note of the scale, the third note of the scale, etc. But most of the time, people play using 1, 4, and 5 chords. So it's a great place to get started. So here are the notes in a C Dorian scale: C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat, C. Now, in order to find chords that are diatonic to this scale, we have to use notes that come from this scale. So one thing we did to find a major scale, the one chord, is we took the first note, the third note, and the fifth note. So basically, we started on the first note, skipped over the second note, played the third note, skipped over the fourth note, and played the fifth note. So it's kind of a game of leapfrog. So let's do that with the one chord for this scale. So the one chord would be C. That's the name of the one chord. Now we're going to skip over the second note, D, and get to the third note of the Dorian scale, E flat. And then skip the fourth note, F, and get to the fifth note, G. So the chord we get is C, E flat, G. Now, even though E flat is the third note in the C Dorian scale, we don't call it the third. We call it the flat third, because all number values are based on the note's relationship to the major scale that has the same name as the root you're dealing with. So since we're dealing with a C chord, we look at the C major scale. In the C major scale, the notes are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. So the third note is E. But in our new chord that we got from the C Dorian scale, it's not an E. It's an E flat, C, E flat, G. Since that E flat is a half step lower than the third note from the C major scale, E goes down to E flat, we can call it the flat third. So even though the E flat is the third note in the Dorian scale, we still call it a flat third because of its relationship to the E note in the C major scale. Now, it's also important to realize that the C chord, C, or the C minor chord, C, E flat, G, and it's minor because you've got a flat third instead of a major third. The E flat is the second note in the chord. In the chord, the first note is C, the second note is E flat, and the third note is G. But we don't call it the second and the third note. We call it the flat third and the fifth because of its relationship to the major scale that has the same name as the root of the chord. So all number values relate to the major scale that has the same name as the root of the scale or the chord you're dealing with. So, what this means is, if you want to play a minor song where the one chord is diatonic to the Dorian scale, then the one chord has to be minor. And it doesn't matter what key you're in. Let's look at the 4 chord. The 4th note in the key of C is F. So we're going to look at the Dorian scale and start on the F note, skip over the G note and play A, skip over the B flat note and play C. And so what we wind up is the chord F, A, C. So we need to think if this chord, this 4 chord, is going to be a major chord or a minor chord. So since the root of the chord is F, we need to look at the F major scale. The F major scale is F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. The 3rd note is A. So we have to compare what we call the 3rd in the chord, F, A, C. A is the 3rd, the middle note, with the 3rd of the major scale that has the same root. Well, in this case, they're exactly the same. The 3rd note in F major is A. The 3rd note in this chord is A. Since they are exactly the same, the 4 chord, or the F chord, is major. And any time you want to play diatonically to the Dorian scale, the 4 chord is always major. Let's look at the 5 chord. The 5th note in the key of C major is G. So we're going to start on the G note, skip over the A note, play the B flat note, skip over the C note, and play the D note. So the chord we're dealing with is G, B flat, D. In order to find out if this chord, this G chord, or this 5 chord, is major or minor, we have to look at the major scale that has the same root as the chord. The root of the G chord is G. So we look at the G major scale, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. The 3rd note is B, but we don't have a B in this chord. We have a B flat. It is a half step lower than the B, which is the 3rd note of the G major scale. Therefore, the B flat is a flat 3rd. When you have a flat 3rd in the chord, it is a minor chord. Therefore, this G chord is a G minor chord. And what that means is, if you want to play diatonically to the Dorian scale in the key of C, you need a G minor chord. And on a larger level, if you want to play diatonically to the Dorian scale of whatever key you're in, the 5 chord needs to be minor. So what that means is, in order to play diatonically to a Dorian scale, the 1 chord has to be minor, the 4 chord has to be major, and the 5 chord has to be minor. So let's look at the Dorian scale where it is on the C harmonica. So it's a tough scale. You've got to avoid the E notes, 2 blow, 5 blow, and 8 blow. And you've got to avoid the B notes, 3 draw, 7 draw, and 10 single bend. There's a lot of bends. 2 double is F, 3 double is A, 3 single is B flat, and 10 double is B flat. And there are some overblows. 1 overblow is E flat. That is tough. I don't care who you are. 4 overblow is E flat, and 7 overblow is B flat. So this is a very challenging scale. What I've done is set my band in the box to have a chord progression with a C minor chord, an F major chord, and a G minor chord. Now you can put them in any order that you want as long as you keep returning to the C minor chord, the root chord. But what I've done is C minor for 2 bars, F major for 2 bars, C minor for 2 bars, G minor for 2 bars, C minor for 2 bars, F major for 2 bars, C minor for 1, G minor for 1, C minor for 1, and G minor for 1. And I had it repeat every 16 bars. So, here's a little bit of jamming for you. up. Now that moment when I said, oh, what I did, I hit the toughest note of all. I hit the E note, 5 below. And the E is the major third in the key of C, which is really the most important note not to play while playing minor. So, guilty as charged. So, this is a way to play minor. But the reality is that when somebody says to you, we're going to play a song in C minor, it does not necessarily mean he's going to use the chords C minor, F major, and G minor. He may use C minor, F minor, and G major. There's all kinds of combinations of 1, 4, and 5 chords. The only thing that makes it minor is that the root chord, in this case in the key of C, is a minor chord, or a C minor chord. So as long as the root chord is minor, it's a minor song. This particular scale is diatonic to a minor 1, a major 4, and a minor 5. But a lot of times when somebody says, let's play in C minor, you may even say to them, and what are the chords? And they say, I don't know. I just put my fingers here. They don't know what the chords are. Or, it's time to start playing. The audience is waiting. So a lot of times, you may be playing the you may be playing the Dorian scale, but it is not diatonic to the chords that the band is playing. There are some people who are very dogmatic, and they believe that that sounds very, very bad. To me, there are 6 scales that I use on a regular basis when playing minor. Each one of them is diatonic to its own group of chords. And it would be wonderful if every time I played a song, the band leader would tell me what the chords were, and I could pick the scale that was diatonic to that chord progression. Now, sometimes I'm able to use my ear and make my best choices as to what I'm guessing is diatonic to the chord progression. However, sometimes I may not be on the right track. And yet, in all my years of playing, I've never had anybody complain about what I did. Why? Shouldn't it sound so horrible to not play diatonically? In my opinion, here's what's going on. Most people do not know a whole lot of theory. And so when they learned how to play minor, they learned one minor scale. Remember I said I know 6? They know 1. So whenever the band leader says, let's play in minor, they are using the 1 minor scale that they know. Now the chances are, it's not always going to be diatonic. So, what has happened is, as listeners, we have been witness to lots of songs being performed, both live and on recording, where the scale that the melodist is using is not diatonic to what the rhythm chord players are playing. And so what happens when sounds that we're not used to are presented to us again and again? We learn to like them. We assimilate them into what is acceptable to us. In my opinion, minor is almost 100% chromatic. Chromatic means all of the notes on the keyboard. If somebody says play in C minor, in my opinion, you could play every note on the keyboard except for E. the major third. That's one sound we haven't gotten used to yet. But I'm guessing that in 100 years we will like it. In any case, the point is, don't stress out so much about being diatonic. Most listeners are very forgiving about whether or not you're playing the Dorian scale with the exact diatonic chords. However, by learning to play diatonically, your ear is more likely to go to notes that sound good. So it's a great exercise to learn to play diatonically. Okay, next time we're going to work on the G Dorian scale, the cross harp Dorian scale. Thanks very much. I'll see you soon.